Welcome to College Hoops Under the Radar by OFG Sports. Here's your host, the online sports guys.
And welcome to College Hoops Under the Radar, the podcast that looks at the mid-major programs that are up and coming and could scare the bejesus out of some of the major conferences, and those major conference teams that are on the bubble. And are their bubble going to burst? Are they actually going to make the show? That's what we discuss on this podcast. And you got three Johns talking hoops.
Whoa. Calm down there, cowboy.
Jon Nelston, Jon Fox.
I don't want to know about it. The only place we've seen three Johns is in a restaurant, man.
Well,
all lined up next to each other behind a door.
And here too. So enjoy.
Yes.
All right. So last week we kind of ended our show piling on the ACC for maybe a mediocre performance so far in this college basketball season. Judging from some of the games I watched this week, it's gone from mediocre to extremely mediocre. And of course, Syracuse. I watched Syracuse and Duke, which used to be a game that was appointment television, and now it's just a sad, pathetic case of bad basketball versus really good basketball.
Well, we had the black cat enter right when you talked about
I know it was perfect timing.
So I think that says it all right there. I had several offers to go to the game and turned down every single one of them. The biggest drama would be whether they would cover or not, and it wasn't even close.
Now, it used to be a hot ticket, but Jon Fox, you sent me a text that said that you could get in for $12 to Duke and Syracuse. And what was it, the same price to get into Yale and Cornell?
$11.
Yes, and I will be attending Yale at Cornell on Saturday, which we'll be discussing probably later in the show. Looking forward to that one.
A little Ivy League action.
Yes.
Hey, we like the smart schools here at OSG Sports. All right, so Leonard Hamilton decides to call it quits at Florida State. Really, he had a really good career there at FSU, and I remember when he won the ACC tournament here in Atlanta. And I was there to witness that. And I just remember Leonard's kind of a guy that you don't want to play poker with. He doesn't change his expression much, but on that night at Phillips Arena, or now State Farm Arena, he had a smile from ear to ear, and it was probably the most active I've ever seen him at a press conference.
I mean, think about this. First and foremost, and this is one of the things that blew my mind, Leonard Hamilton is 76.
He is. He looks like he's 46.
This is what I'm saying. So
I even told him that to his face a few years ago when I was interviewing him. He credited his mother, who was still living at the time.
Hey, look, his playing career in college ended in 1971 at UT Martin. That's the Nixon administration, man. That is the Reds. That is before the Reds and the Oakland A's. That is before the A's went on a three-peat. That is
before the 72 Dolphins.
Correct. Think about
whose next album came out in 71.
This is what we're saying. And I'm sure a lot of folks were sitting there and wondering when Austin Peay signed an assistant coach in 1971, who are you? Who the blank are you? And as it turns out, it turns into a 55-year career as a coach. Austin Peay, assistant at Kentucky for 12 years, which gets lost on a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Joe B. Hall.
Oklahoma State, Miami for a decade, Wizards for a year, and then ever since then, Florida State University. It is crazy to think that he has coached 1,158 games in the college ranks to date. That is the kind of career that we're talking. When I saw that he was 76, people are sitting there going, yeah, he's 76. I'm like, BS. And your mom. No, that's virtually impossible. But no, he has been an absolute poster child of longevity to what's going on. And I know a lot of folks in the media, both local and regional and national, they've all said, Leonard Hamilton is That dude's like an onion. You know, there are different levels and different layers to him. And once you get past that first layer and you get exposed to the next level, then you get exposed to the different levels of Leonard Hamilton. And so it's just crazy to think that Florida State basketball will be looking for a head coach for the second time in 23 years. And I mean, if you think about it, since let's say 40 years. 40 years going back to 1986. Florida State University has had 3 college basketball coaches. Leonard Hamilton taking up obviously most of that. Steve Robinson was there for 6 years, 5 seasons, 6 years. And then Pat Kennedy was there for 12, 11 seasons, 12 years, however you want to look at it. So they're looking for their 4th head coach in 40 years at Florida State University. What that says, it can be written as one of 2 ways, as the Florida State alum on this show. Either they hang out with people too long, or they're happy with where they are, and they're just satisfied with the results. So I'm intrigued, and here's my question to the both of you. It has, once this was announced, everybody's sitting there going, oh, yeah, a replacement here. You get your hashtag Leonard Hamilton replacements out there on the 280-character app and such. Think of a name, any name, and it can be, in the current atmosphere. I mean, you could name, Jimmy Dykes if you wanted to. But on Sports Talk Radio, they were naming replacements for the hashtag Leonard Hamilton replacement at Florida State University. One name I heard, I did one of those old-fashioned Benny Hill spit take kind of things.
Yeah.
Who would you put into the position at Florida State? Wilkie, let me start with you, and then I'll go to Sly. So, Wilkie, who would you have in? And if you get the name that I have registered from the Sports Talk conversations, I will go ding, 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 and then I'll proceed to yell simultaneously, but not independently.
I have no clue where Florida State is going with this and who's out there, who the hotshot assistants and who's the mid-majors that are out there that would want to move up. So I would probably be your wrong source there.
Just naming, who would you want in the position? Let me phrase it that way.
Would I want in that position?
Yeah, who would you chase after to fill that void in Tallahassee?
Oh.
And Sly's black cat does not apply.
Let's hear from Sly first before I give me a time to percolate that a little bit.
All right, so percolate. So Sly, who would you put into the spot shadow for you in this particular case? Who would you want to be considered for a gig like this?
Well, it depends if you want someone who's loathsome and wins, or someone who's personable. I mean, what about Mick Cronin?
Okay. I mean, Florida State ain't afraid to pay no money. So, I mean, that's Mick Cronin, you throw him into the mix. Okay. So Mick Cronin.
Not sure that would be a good fit.
So, but anyway, Sly has put Mick Cronin on the table. He has filibustered enough for you, Wilkie. He and the black cat have filibustered.
Chris Mack?
Okay. So Chris Mack, you put those on the table. Those are not the 2 names. Those 2 names are not the one name that I heard. The one name that I heard, see if you can guess who this individual is. In March of 2019, it was reported that this individual discussed an offer to a recruit, which was overheard on an FBI wiretap. This individual described the payment as a, quote, strong-ass offer, end quote. And in the transcripts, he's quoted as saying he was frustrated with the situation. Quote, I'll be honest with you, I'm effing tired, and that's not the word he used. I'm effing tired of dealing with the thing, like I'm just effing sick of dealing with the ish. And he didn't use the word ish either. Like this should not be that effing complicated, end quote. The next day, this particular individual, it was announced by the university that he was employed by. He was indefinitely suspended amid the FBI probe. Then his suspension was lifted from that university. Then 10 days after the suspension was lifted, this individual agreed to significant modifications to his contract in order to be reinstated, forfeiting $250,000 in bonuses, contract would allow the university to fire him for cause if he committed a level 1 or level 2 NCAA violation, which he did eventually do, which meant that institution did relieve him of duty in the after the 2022 season.
Is this Huggy Bear?
No, I will continue.
Okay.
Terminated March 12, 2022, after the NCAA formally served the notice of allegations based on the investigations into what we just previously discussed, recruiting violations at his previous institution. So, a year later, this individual was hired at yet another school in that same state, and it was a group of 5. He went from a Power 5 at the time to a group of 5, same state, and he replaced the coach. 3 months into his tenure, he was suspended for the first 10 games of the 23-24 season and given a 2-year show cause penalty for his recruiting and bribery allegations. Any idea who this individual is?
I'm drawing a blank.
South Carolina?
A little more west and a time zone over. The name that was heard by me suggested for the Florida State gig, Will Wade.
Oh, okay.
Will Wade.
I remember that. I couldn't think of the name though.
All of that stuff, and just sure as ish, somebody decided, yeah, there's a guy down the road. There's a guy down the road. He's coached in the SEC. He's there at where he is right now, and he's at McNeese. Currently, he's in the Southland. But yeah, dude on Sports Talk Radio literally said, yeah, Will Wade. And I'm like,
the guy can coach, and it's all legal now.
It's all legal now. Right. But do you want the baggage of everything in the past where he was caught on an FBI wiretap? I don't think that's something that you can sit there and shake. That will always be on your CV. FBI wiretap. Heard on an FBI wiretap. That will always be a part of your Google search. Do you want that kind of individual there at that university?
Well, it's your alma mater, so
the answer's no.
You speak for him.
No, you do not want that individual. Give me a hot assistant. And besides, you're probably going to have to pay a lot for NIL, so you're going to have to figure out where you're going to make your financial dive one way or the other in the financial seesaw that is NIL. You're going to have to get somebody. Oh, I don't know. Maybe the head coach at Drake. Just saying. Maybe you get somebody who's a hot head coach in a conference that is.
That's going to be a tough get because he's been there for a year now.
Well, east of the Mississippi. How about that?
And Drake plays fairly well for a group of 5 school.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to be a tough get.
Fine.
But with Leonard Hamilton leaving, for Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC has hemorrhaging coaches. I mean, last 4 years, you've lost Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, and Jim Boeheim. That's 3,000 wins right there. That's, let's see.
I love
that's
Duke.
9 national championships right there. And then you've also lost a solid head coach and a guy I like a lot, Mike Bray. Tony Bennett's got a national title. Really took Virginia places with some guys that you wouldn't think would gel into a national championship contender. But man, that pack line defense made a big difference in games. Jim Larinaga recently, and we discussed that, and now Leonard Hamilton. So you got a group that has gone to 27 Final Fours and 10 national championships.
He did the math.
Gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it just speaks volumes about the level of play in that league. And the fact that the stars of coaching, we talked about the stars of there's no star power on the court, but now on the coaching, I mean, who's your marquee guy? I guess it's John Shire.
Wow.
I guess it's him. And
By default.
in Louisville.
Well,
it's his first
John,
year.
We talked a lot about North Carolina last week, and there have been several articles since about Hubert Davis saying that the old model doesn't work in North Carolina anymore. They're going to have to hire a GM.
Yeah.
The whole conference seems to be in transition or most of it anyway, because he said it right, that the model they used before doesn't apply seemingly in today's environment.
Mm-hmm.
And with all those old coaches aren't fools. They're leaving.
No.
They're
And
leaving at the right time.
And Sly, to your point, that's why when Wilkie was mentioning the those names of Bennett and Larinaga, I'm sure that folks in some circles will sit there and say, "Yeah, bring them back in." No, I think they've already shown their colors in this current environment, and all you're doing is changing the blazer and changing the tie shirt combo. And I don't think that if you included those two names in the discussion in Tallahassee, I don't think it would fly just because of what happened at the beginning of this season, right at the beginning of this season, and during this season. And besides, if you wanted to bring somebody that came from the University of Coral Gables to touch anything in Tallahassee, I don't think that would work.
Well, it worked with Leonard Hamilton.
I'm disavowing that knowledge, sir.
Well, we got a lot more to talk about here on College Hoops Under the Radar. We're going to head out west because there's some teams out in the West Coast Conference and the Mountain West you need to know about.
Yes.
That's next as the College Hoops Under the Radar podcast returns after this timeout.
And we've got a cluster buster from our resident bracketologist, believe it or not. Phil is going to let you know what he's got on his mind, too.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I'm going to join the basketball show here, too, talking about tournament time and brackets. Here we sit in the first week of February. College basketball is hitting its home stretch. Lots of conference championship games. And a lot of things can change going into the postseason. March Madness begins early in March. And a lot of things could change in the final groups that make it to, or teams that make it to that tournament, which is 68 teams, and that's a lot of teams. We'll start off by talking a little bit more about conference layout, because right now everything is pretty much SEC basketball. Yeah, you heard me. SEC basketball. They didn't have a great year in football, but basketball, there's a lot of really good teams here. As we're looking here today, you've got at least two teams, both Alabama and Auburn, that are looking like number one seeds going into the tournament. Unless they have some sort of spectacular collapse here over the next month, they're definitely going to be within the top three seeds. Look for both of them to end up with number one seeds as things play themselves out. Florida and Tennessee are looking like number twos, and Kentucky a number three seed. I mean, that's right there. You're talking about five teams already just in the SEC within the first grouping of 12. That's a lot. The Big Ten's still pretty well represented at 9 teams making it to the tournament right now. 8 from the Big 12, 5 from the ACC, 4 from the Big East, 4 from the Mountain West, a couple from the West Coast Conference, along with the automatic qualifiers. And no, I'm not going to go too deep into each individual team, where they are, how they got in, if they're going to stay there, because a lot of that can change. But right now, you're looking at a whole bunch of teams from the SEC playing in your round one of bracketology. I know I'm surprised, quite honestly, that ESPN has a co-opted term, but they haven't. So we'll talk about that. Really, it's anybody's ball game. There's a lot of teams: Duke, Houston, Iowa State, Michigan State, Marquette, Purdue, Kansas. Any one of about right now 12 to 15 teams have a shot at winning the NCAA championship. And as we all know, once we get into March Madness, all that's off the table, and it could be just about anybody getting hot and running the table. Because as we all know and have learned in college football and with the NCAA tournament over the years, it's not how you play in the beginning of February, it's how you're playing in March and how you finish, not how you start. Next time around, we'll get a little bit more into detail about individual conferences and individual teams, but right now we're just talking overall. I'm looking at the numbers, and that's what they look like they're going to play out in terms of the amount of teams from each conference that gets in, Who those teams are may change mildly over the next few weeks, but look for them to all get in. And that concludes this episode 1 of our bracketology segment.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Check out our X page, formerly known as Twitter for a rant. Comment or whatever is on your mind about college basketball. Now back to college hoops under the radar. Here's your host, John Wilkerson.
Welcome back to College Hoops Under the Radar. And let's continue our discussion on college basketball. John and I, and John as well, worked the phones trying to get some interviews this week. And it was not a good week for us.
It's National Signing Day 2025. So you had those with the local sports anchors too.
Exactly. So no guest this week, but we thank Phil Canner for his appearance. Let's briefly discuss a couple of West Coast leagues.
Sure.
That are really playing well and will be multi-bid leagues, in my opinion. And then we can talk about a couple other things, topics as well in our remaining time. But let's start with the West Coast Conference, because we saw St. Mary's, at least I did, just play a complete game against Gonzaga. And they have become the top of the West Coast Conference. In fact, Gonzaga is now in third place of the league. San Francisco is in second place. Those three will probably are locks to get in. 2-3 really well coached and really good basketball teams, and Santa Clara could sneak in if they have a good conference tournament run, or even win the conference tournament. It might bump one of those guys out. I think my point is, for about 20 years now, this league, the West Coast Conference, has been fantastic as far as a mid-major. I don't even really consider them a mid-major anymore. I think they're up there with the Big East and the rest of the leagues. I mean, you got a program like Gonzaga that's gone to the Final Four. You got a program like St. Mary's that's done a few Sweet 16s. And I think this might be the number 6 on the totem pole. It might be ahead of a couple of the power leagues.
Dig it.
Nope.
Go for it, Clyde.
Yeah. Gonzaga's ascent over the last 2 decades. This is a great example of how they set the standard for the rest of the league. And to their credit, some of the other teams have risen to the challenge. And the only thing that's preventing them from being talked about more nationally is that most people in the Eastern time zone are asleep when they're playing, because I agree with you. They're playing. They play a great brand of basketball, and then it's everything you'd want in in watching a league day to day.
I mean, think about this. Right now, and this is above 500 in the West Coast Conference, just in conference play, and then we'll get into wins and losses. Going through what happened this past week, St. Mary's is already at 20 wins. Half of those are in conference. They're unbeaten. They are 2.5 games clear of San Francisco, who's got 18 wins. Gonzaga's 7 wins in conference, 16-7. Santa Clara 7-4, 15-9. Loyola Marymount and Oregon State 14-8 and 16-7. Nice beaver. Thanks, I just got it stuffed. And that gets you that's your top 6 of the conference right now in the West Coast. So you're going to have at least 3, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Gonzaga, if chalk holds. And then the 4, the 5, and the 6 right now fighting for those extra bids. I will be, this might be late night appointment viewing to keep an eye on the West Coast Conference and what's been happening there. And does anybody in that 4, 5, and 6 knock out a San Francisco? Because everybody stares at St. Mary's and Gonzaga east of the Mississippi. And do you get any kind of, let's say something happens to San Francisco and they stumble, and somebody in the 4, 5, 6, Santa Clara, Loyola, Oregon State makes a run in the tournament, does that affect the bids going forward? I'm intrigued with the West Coast Conference.
Well, the fact that you include Oregon State with those schools kind of jarred me there for a minute. San Francisco has their shot. I mean, as we're taping this on a Thursday night, this is the night they play St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. And so they have an opportunity to make some noise in that league. And then they still got 2 meetings with Gonzaga coming up. And I did watch actually, I've seen a couple of games that the Dons have played. A solid basketball team. They have really no blemishes other than the fact that they don't have a quad 1 win. So that's probably going to affect them a little bit. But if they can hold their own in their league, again, this league has established itself as a multi-bid league, and they're going to get probably 3 bids this year. And if, I think Santa Clara still has a shot at both the big boys, St. Mary's and Gonzaga. But to me, I love this level of basketball because you got seniors and you got guys that are experienced who don't make a whole lot of mistakes. And these are the type of programs that'll make a deep Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run or sneak into a Final Four. That's what I love about this league.
Be stealthy.
With the demise of the ACC, maybe only getting 4 bids, that the question, whether the SEC will get 12 or 13, or whether the committee will have the stomach for that. If they don't, teams out west may get 4. Which is warranted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you go to the Mountain West, and there are about 3 clubs out there that have that potential as well. You look at New Mexico. I mean, this is a team, if you look at their record, Jon Nelston, 11-1 in conference, 19-4. The only issue as far as impressing the committee is they've had a couple of bad losses on their resume, and they haven't beaten a quad 3 or a quad 4 team. I'm sorry. They have 1 loss each to a quad 3 and a quad 4 team. So those are a couple of bad losses. But again, I always say it's how you play in February where you pass the eye test. You have your resume, but the eye test is a big deal with the selection committee. And New Mexico might be that team that passes that eye test.
Okay, so let me see now. I wish we were like at Daytona or something, because what I would do if we were in the flag stand, say the cars are the individual teams that are trying to get into the tournament. Say they're running on the track, and they're doing everything, and there's a crash, and that's when the guy in the flag stand takes out the yellow flag and he starts going like this. Tell you what, New Mexico, the fact that they're 19-4 is great, but I'm in the flag stand and I've got a yellow out. I've got a yellow out for New Mexico, and here's why: 11-1 at home, 19-4 overall.
The pit is a famous place.
Yeah, it is absolutely true. And here's the schedule to get them into conference play where they're 11-1. So you start your season with Nichols. You beat UCLA. You beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You lose at St. John's. You're 3-1. You beat Grambling. You beat Texas Southern. You lost to Arizona State by 3. You beat USC. You beat San Jose State. You lose to New Mexico State in the pit. That is your only home loss this year, was to the Aggies, and that was by 6. You blow out Western New Mexico by putting 122 on the board. You beat VCU. You win in Fort Collins. You win at Fresno by 14. You beat Nevada, and for me, you're getting you're getting your wins at home. I want to know which team shows up. Is it the team that was doing the damage early against the non-conference schedule and not having to show concern, or is it the team that had no problem with Boise, had no problem with Fresno, then went on the road, knocked off UNLV, Utah State, and then went to Colorado Springs to beat Colorado State? Because right now the rest of their schedule is this. I'll take it a week at a time. Anyway, at Air Force, then they play Wyoming at home at the pit. That is next. That is in the next 7 days from as we're talking right now. I want to know which New Mexico team pops up, the one that had the easy schedule early, that got you out to that great start, or the one that is here late, that seems to be confident and is trying to figure out that has it all figured out. I want to figure out. That's why I've got a yellow flag out right now for New Mexico as we're talking Mountain West.
And we'll wrap up the West by saying San Diego State and Utah State are in that mix too. Could be a 3-bid league. Utah State has caught a lot of eyes this year nationally, just how they're playing in that league. And San Diego State's a brand name. And again, they almost won the national title a few years ago. They've got a quad one win over Houston in a neutral site. So they've got a nice resume. But I know, Jon Fox, you had some points you wanted to make out east where you are with some of the mid-major leagues.
First, I'm going to be the bad guy here and say that Colorado State is in Fort Collins, not Colorado
Thank
Springs.
you.
I'm so sorry. But
That'd be the Air Force Academy.
The Air Force is in Colorado Springs. Thank you. That goes into addendums and corrections at the end of the show. Yeah.
The people in the Centennial State are mad at you.
Fine. Fort Collins.
I'll weave two games together here where the Colonial has some tremendous basketball going on. You talked about Chris Mack earlier, John Wilkerson. College of Charleston, they've got some injuries right now, but they have some really good international players, legit size, legit guards. If they get in, they're going to be a real problem. William and Mary with Brian Earl there, who came from Cornell, they have injuries too, but they trap all over the court. They're really deep. It's sort of like a mini Shaka Smart type of situation. Towson is on a roll there. That is a great league to watch night to night. Good styles, legit players. I wouldn't be surprised if whoever makes it to the tournament from Colonial does some damage. And I brought up Brian Earl because going to Yale at Cornell in a couple of days. Brian Earl was at Cornell up until this past year. John Jacques is now the coach who played on the Sweet 16 team in 2010 at Cornell. Yale has a coach who's been there, James Jones, for over 25 years. Wow. We saw what they did to Auburn last year in the tournament.
Yeah, we did.
Those two teams are the top two teams of the league as of right now. In Ithaca on Saturday, fabled Newman Arena, it could be a heck of a game. I know it comes down to the tournament in that league, but there is a lot of good basketball going on out there if you're paying attention and not succumbing to the nonsense of watching Dick Vitale come back to call Duke Clemson, which I absolutely will not do. But
no.
Yeah,
Okay, so in your neck of the wood, Jon Fox,
yes,
has Syracuse's struggles, has Ithaca, New York become the place to be seen in the college basketball world?
There you go.
For this year, yes. A few years ago, they had University of Buffalo and Syracuse and others, but this year Ithaca is the center of Central and Western New York basketball.
Fantastic.
And I hear Ithaca, New York is lovely in February. Guys, we got to close it out there for the College Hoops Under the Radar podcast. Next week, we hope to have some guests for you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
All right. So before we go, we have to finish the show like we do on the college football side and try and find some college hoops on a budget. College hoops on a budget.
You got a minute.
I got a minute. Fine. $8. Little Rocket Moorhead at LST Johnson Arena, Moorhead, Kentucky. Get in price, $8. Boston College in Syracuse.
Not going.
From the JMA Wireless Dome, Syracuse, New York.
I find Big East battle, but
all you need is the kid on the bike throwing newspapers. I want like $2.
I'll be down in Ithaca instead.
Eastern Kentucky and Stetson at the Edmond Center in DeLand, $5. There you go. That's your sample.
Wow. All right. Well, we hope you spend your money wisely and plan your trip to Ithaca, New York in February. You'll love it. So join us next week. Again, we hope to have some guests for you. Again, we like to have fun with this. Yeah. It's college basketball. Mm-hmm. It's the mid-majors. It's the bubble teams. Debate all you want. So the three Johns talking hoops are checking out. For Jon Fox, Jon Nelston, I'm John Wilkerson. We'll see you next week. So long, everyone. And please like, and subscribe.
Go to Belmont, spend $8.